So I think we can start our session without waiting further. Welcome each and every one of you to our orientation class. Here we are going to discuss certain things on how to clear UGC NET English. Now let me introduce you to our speaker for the session, Gokul S. About Gokul S, he is a research scholar at Institute of English, and he cleared NET with JRF in first attempt in 2017 and has also secured All India rank 804 in the Civil Service Examination 2019. So he is very well qualified to give us a class on an orientation session on how to clear UGC NET. We hope this session is useful to you, and you are welcome to post your queries and questions in the chat box, and we'll address these questions after the session. So let me welcome Gokul S.
Hello and namaste to all, and thanks, Adina. First off, you people are here to know how to crack NET and JRF. See, let me be very clear in the very outset. Let me be very clear that people might tell you that, okay, this is a difficult process. We have written, and there might be people in here who have written it countless times, not been able to crack NET, or people who cracked NET multiple times but not been able to crack JRF. Let me tell you this very clearly. Your difficulty is because you haven't been doing what I would call smart work, what I would call efficient work. So if you are doing your work professionally, efficiently, you can crack this. This exam is simple enough. This exam is something that can be cracked in, say, under 15 days. And I am going to discuss, or I'm going to just give you a couple of pointers on how to do that. So I believe most of you are people who are well acquainted with the structure and stuff about NET exam. But there may be newcomers. There may be people who have just joined their PG. There may be people who are even doing their graduation. So let us first look at the basic stuff about NET exam. So what exactly is NET? National Eligibility Test. As the name suggests, it is something. It's a national level qualification which helps you qualify to become an assistant professor to work in any university or college. That is the most important thing about this particular exam. The second thing is, once you qualify this exam, you can enter a college or a university as a research scholar without qualifying any entrance exam. For example, let's say you want to join University of Hyderabad or let's say JNU, whatever, whichever institution, as a research scholar. If you have the NET exam, if you have cracked the NET exam, this becomes facilitated. Otherwise, you will have to write an entrance exam. And the third one, this also stands as a qualification, as a substitute for exams such as SET, SLET, those state exams, which makes you qualify to become a teacher in a higher secondary school or something. So if you are from, I believe most of you are Malayalis from Kerala. We have an exam named SET, which bestows on you the qualification to become a higher secondary teacher. So if you have a NET, you don't need to write the SET exam. Other states have exams such as SLET. Those also get substituted by NET because this is a national level qualification. Now, what is JRF? How is it different from NET? And I would request those people who already know these things, please don't drop off because this is just a preliminary stuff. The real stuff is just coming. So what exactly is JRF? Junior Research Fellowship, it actually gives you an opportunity to do research with a scholarship. This is the part where I motivate you with the exact statistics of JRF. I am a JRF scholar and right now I receive 31,000 rupees per month plus house spending allowance. So talking about HRF, I live in a tier 2 city and I get around 5,000 rupees. If you're living in a tier 1 city such as Bangalore or Delhi, you will be getting like 7,500 rupees to begin with. For the first 2 years, a full-time JRF scholar would get around 38,500 rupees. And after 2 years, you get converted to senior research fellow, you will be getting around 45,000 rupees. This is huge. This is huge because, see, when I go for this uh, fellowship purposes to the university office, most of the officials working there, they don't receive this amount of salary. So this is huge. This is the biggest motivation for you people to crack JRF. Now, the second thing, another important thing about JRF is that it kind of opens your gate to join premier institutions. For example, if you have a JRF, you become there is a vacancy reserved. There are certain number of vacancies reserved in every university for JRF scholars. For instance, talk about JNU. JNU back in 2019, when I was looking for my PhD, JNU had 2 out of 6 vacancies reserved for JRF scholars. So the same thing happens with every institution. Indian Institute of Technology, Madras, the IIT functioning in Chennai. There, you can go to the institution only if you have JRF. So this becomes your ticket to join a premier institution. Now, once you have looked at these things, what is NET and JRF, let's briefly look at the structure of NET exam. Again, I know most of you will know this, but the NET exam basically consists of 2 papers. There was a time when it consisted of 3 papers. Let's leave it. Right now, it consists of 2 papers. First one is a general paper, which has 50 questions. What comes in the general paper? The general paper actually consists of questions which are from reasoning, mathematics, that kind of thing. Then there is something related to research methodology, such stuff. Often even questions related to Indian polity, such and general current affairs. For instance, which was the top ranked university or college in the national NIRF, such questions also come. So that is the first paper, 50 questions, 100 marks. And the second paper is your subject paper. In your case, it will be English literature. And you can see that it consists of 100 questions and 200 marks. And the important thing about this is NET exam has no negative marking, which means that you can answer all the questions, whether you know it, don't know it, you have the freedom to answer all the questions. This is very important. I'll tell you why later. This is very important for you, for how you will crack your NET exam. Now comes the critical question. Is it possible to crack your NET exam in 15 days? Let me tell you my own story. I did my NET, I did my first and only NET back in November 2017. At that time, I was doing my master's. I was in my first semester. So, I joined my MA in August 2017. The UGC issued the notification for the NET somewhere around September 2017. I believed that I knew nothing. So I was not really willing to apply because I felt it was pointless to apply at that time. But actually 2 things happened. My mother simply insisted that you just go and try it, you just give it a try. And then there were 2 professors in our institution. One of them was a really young professor who had recently qualified. She told me, okay kid, this is not such a huge thing. You just give an attempt. It is very likely that if you try honestly, if you put in your effort, you are going to crack. Then one of our older professors, he told me, it is not important whether you crack it this time or not. You give it a try this time so that you will crack it the next time. And that is how I went and gave the application. when I put in my application. Yeah. And then after giving my application, I had under 30 days. At the same time, I was going to the college. I was obviously a full-time PG student. I was going to the college. I used to study during the mornings and evenings for 30 days. To be exact, around 32 days. And the 33rd day, I went and gave my exam and I cracked the NET, cracked the JRF. I appeared in the general category, scored enough marks to be in the general category JRF scholarship. I was among the 32 scholars who qualified for JRF that time. See, the point is that if you, and after the exam, I sat and thought, what happened? How did I do that? And then I came up with a few things. I came up with stuff, how I worked this out, what kind of strategies I adopted. And I found out that with professional help, with someone guiding you along, this is an exam that you could crack in under 15 days. And actually, I developed a kind of a template which I tested on 12 of my friends the next time during June 2018, I believe. And I'm very proud to say that of the 12, 9 actually cracked the NET exam with less than 15 days of preparation. And after that particular turn, during the time when I was in college, quite a few of my friends actually adopted the same things and they go through. And now, when I sit here and talk to you, it is that template and the belief that you could repeat the same thing that inspires me to talk to you about this whole thing. Now, before we go into the finer details, let's think about the syllabus, because it's important, it's extremely important for you people to know your syllabus. The most important thing in cracking this particular exam in the shortest possible time is to know your syllabus. See, first thing I would suggest you do is sit and go through the syllabus. This covers most of what is called English literature. And I believe English literature people have a very detailed breakup of the syllabus in their website. I would refer you to that. You have to go and study that, because instead of you simply going through a guide, there are several guides available in the market. Then there are people who teach this, people who teach about this endlessly. But what I would tell you is, see, I don't know if they look at the syllabus, because if you have a clear picture of the syllabus, you will know what are the important stuff. You will know how to go about it. So this, I don't think this session permits enough time to take up each and every segment of the syllabus. What I would suggest is go to their website. English websites have a detailed breakup of the syllabus. Go there and check it out and understand which are the important areas. So that is one important thing I would suggest you people do this evening itself. Soon after this session, I would suggest you do this. Now, before we go into the exact analysis, one more thing I would like you to keep in mind, and that is the cutoff mark for every year. If you will look at the screen you have, you will understand that cutoff for the general category has generally been around 50-60% for NET. This is important. Why? Because this is not a competitive exam. We are not going to look at scoring 100% marks. There are exams like GATE where the mark you get becomes important. But here for NET or JRF, that is not very important. Whether you score 85% marks or whether you score 65% marks, you crack your NET exam. Why is this important? Because this will enable you to focus on the important points, the important aspects, and skip those aspects which are not very important. And another thing, this enables you to, take a lucky spot shot at those questions which you don't really know when you are at the exam hall. Because there is no negative marking, there is a particular cutoff. You just need to come above this cutoff. Let me give you an example. There is a part of the syllabus which is called Greco-Roman class. If you look at the questions of NET exam conducted from 2009 to 2021, there has not been more than 2 to 3 questions asked from this particular portion every year. Now, if you want to answer these 2-3 questions, you will have to study 40-50 pages of material in any given guide. So what exactly is the point? When you are trying to crack this exam under 15 days, there is no point going through all the facts in the Greco-Roman classics. Even without that, you can score enough marks. The similar thing goes with many parts of the syllabus. Therefore, always keep in mind, focus on those portions which will fetch you most marks. And now we'll look at those which are those we'll see which are those portions. We have prepared for you the statistics of the last 5 sessions of NET, which is important because that will help you understand the trend of the last few sessions. See, the first thing is if you look at the NET that happened in July 2018, what you will see is the portion that got the most priority is history of English literature. They have asked almost 61% of the questions from that. See, when you see the chart on your screen, you don't need to remember this thing because we'll be later on putting it in our social media handle. If you at all want to look at these charts, you can come back and look at it. Just understand this fact. The same thing happens with the next session, that is 2018. I think it was September, the next session. Okay, December 2019. Sorry, 2018. That is again, history of English literature had a lot of prominence, and now the trend slightly starts to change in the next session. If you look at that, after the shift from UGC and CBSE to UGC and NTA, cultural theory, cultural studies and literary theory have gained a great deal of prominence. If you look at the next one, the trend continues. And the final session, the final NET. Again, the same thing holds up. And an interesting thing, over the last 3 sessions, history of English literature has reduced in prominence. But now, if you look at the analysis, even though history of English literature has now reduced prominence, still it accounts for about 30% of the question, which is huge given that in such a vast syllabus, one section covers 30% of the syllabus means, or 35% of the questions means, this is one portion you will have to deal with a great deal of emphasis. Again, another thing is, if you remember the pie chart, there was a section named literary criticism. Literary criticism could be included within history of English literature, which means that will take it up to around 40%, which means that history of English literature is extremely prominent in helping you clear your NET. Another important section is literary theory and cultural studies. Over the last 3-4 years, it has been around 15 questions have been coming from this particular section. This section is actually small, very small, because you just need to learn a few things. For example, let's say, let's just briefly take up an example, psychoanalysis. About psychoanalysis, you don't need to go into learn deep and learn what did Freud say, what did Lacan say, all those things. You don't need to learn as if you are going to write your PG exam. That is pointless. When you learn for your NET, what do you have to learn? You will have to understand what is psychoanalysis in just 2 lines. who are the important people? Freud, Lacan, blah blah blah. Then what? I am not disrespecting these people when I say blah blah, mind you. And then you'll have to learn Freud. What are the basic stuff he said? Like Oedipus complex. What is it? Okay, child has a certain kind of relationship with his mother. Let's not go into that. Then what did Lacan say? He talked about mirror stage. He talked about mechanics. These are the few things. Then other people, recent people, like whoever. Yeah, Zizek. Yeah, you will have to just learn who are these people, what are the works they wrote, and what are the important concepts they propound. Nothing more, nothing less. Basically, I would say, talking about psychoanalysis, you could finish psychoanalysis in one slide. And they are going to ask only questions from this particular slide, nothing outside that. The same goes for every theory, be it Marxism, be it feminism, be it whatever, eco-criticism, whatever. One slide of information and you will be able to answer all the questions. So, cultural theory and cultural studies and literary theory is small area, will give you around 15 marks, which is very important because these 15 marks could determine whether you get into or outside. Then there are certain areas which you do not need to give much prominence to. For example, if you remember the pie chart, American literature, 1 or 2 questions every time. Similarly, European literature, 1 or 2 questions every time. Then there is Greco-Roman classics, as I said earlier. Then also there is Commonwealth literature, just 1 or 2 questions. Okay, if you have the time, you can look through it. But these 1 or 2 questions are not going to determine whether you crack your net or not compared to those 15 questions from cultural theory or those 40 questions from history of English literature. I call it hell. Not because it is bad, because it is easy. Okay. So, you get the point. Now there are sections like Indian English literature or Indian English studies, however you want to call it. From that section, there have been consistently questions asked around 6, 7, 8, more than 5 questions. This area is important. Why? Because there are so few authors. Starting from Ram Charan Sharma or Kashi Prasad Ghosh, there are so few authors till recent times. Maybe 10 authors. If you study these 10 authors, you are going to get around 5, 6, 7, 8 questions. See, it is as simple as that. Just understand these 10 authors, what works they wrote, what was the basic theme, and you are going to get 8 questions, 16 marks. And then there are sections like methodology, which I would say, if you have basic common sense, again, I am not trying to underestimate people who haven't cracked NET. No, I am just saying that some people, when they sit at the exam hall, they don't feel very confident. And because of that, they end up making questions from methodology and stuff, wrong answers to those questions. See, if you carefully read those questions, you are always able to answer them. And what is the one short solution to get those questions? Do as many mock tests as possible. That is the only solution. And then there are questions, reading comprehension, reason, assertion and reason, those questions. Around 10 to 15 questions are asked from those things. And again, these are questions, if you very carefully read your questions, you can get these marks for sure. If you have 10 questions from comprehension, you can get 20 marks. Absolutely, you can get, given that you read those very carefully. Similar thing goes with really assertion and reasoning. So that is the basic analysis, overall analysis. Now we go into history of English literature, because that is one prominent section. We'll break that into sections. If you look at the first slide first, that is June 2018, right? July 2018. If you will look at that particular slide, you will see that one section that has huge prominence is the modern era, modern interwar era, and then the post-war era. Then again, Elizabethan era, that also has prominence. Restoration, Augustan to Restoration, Romantic, and Victorian. Again, if we go to the next slide, the same thing happens. I think we can, the same thing holds. We can go to the next one. When you look at each of these slides, what you understand is, except for certain anomalies, so I'm taking up the analysis. Except for certain anomalies, we usually have a pattern, which is most of the questions, a huge amount of questions are asked from the 20th century. Involving modernism, the interwar period, postmodern era, and a couple of movements. You know those movements, Imagism, then Dadaism, again, blah, blah, blah. Including all those sections, a huge number of questions are asked. Then, second most prominent would be Augustan to Restoration age. Probably because Milton is there. Usually, Milton, there are few net papers without at least one question from Milton. Similar is the case with Shakespeare. Because Shakespeare is there, questions are asked from Elizabethan age. Obviously, then Victorian and Romantic. So, 5 sections: 20th century, Restoration, Elizabethan, Romantic, and Victorian. In this order are the most important sections that will help you score the most number of marks for your health section. Then we have stuff like Chaucer. 2 to 3 questions are asked. Usually 2 to 3 questions are asked from Chaucer every year. But there is an interesting thing about Chaucer. All these 2 to 3 questions keep repeating. Either those are asked from Chaucer's works, or from characters in the Canterbury Tales, or from contemporaries of Chaucer. If you look at the net question papers from June 2009, when it was first started, to the last question paper, this one question, let me tell you the question. Who among these is not a contemporary of Chaucer? This particular question, I can tell you, surely has been repeated for more than 10 times. Just know these names: Dunbar, Landland, Gower, and this question you have answered. The other person who is not Dunbar, Landland, and Gower is the person who is not contemporary of Chaucer. As simple as that. These are questions you cannot miss. So, if you look at the very basic stuff about Chaucer, you will get these 2-3 questions easily. Then there are stuff like Old English period, Middle English period. If you look at certain guides, there are pages and pages of information. But usually, sometimes one question is asked, sometimes 2 questions are asked, mostly 0 questions are asked. So, unless you have a lot of time at your hand, you can usually just glance through this section. You can usually just scan through this section. So, and when I say scan through these sections, I would say that you actually require professional help to scan through these sections. That is there, but the fact remains. So, that is the general analysis of what you have in the History of English Literature section. What do we have next? Okay, the importance of working out your previous year question papers. Like I've been telling, number one is that there is a high chance of repeating previous year question papers. If you work out question papers from June 2009 to the last one, the one that happened in 2020, there are over 20 sets of question paper. There is very likelihood that there will be questions repeated. number one. Number two, this will give you an idea of how questions are asked, which is very important. Like I told you earlier, it is very important to solve mock tests. Solving mock tests will it will enhance what I call your ability to do intelligent guessing. Intelligent guessing is a very interesting concept. I think we cannot cover it in this particular section. We could probably do another record where we could look at intelligent guessing as a thing that will allow you to score up to 60% of your marks. The critical thing about developing intelligent guessing is working out previous year question papers, doing as many mock tests as possible. And another third thing about the previous year question paper is that it will help you identify those areas from where questions are prominently asked. So it is critical, it's very important to work out your previous year question paper. Now, so importance of paper one. Yeah. Why is paper one critical? Paper one is critical because it helps you score marks. Like I told you, it's a general paper. This is a paper that tests your skills as a standard 10 student, I would say. Usually, what you call mathematics or what I call quantitative aptitude. Those questions are asked from a 10th level. If you know your basic maths, you can answer those questions. Then again, reasoning. Reasoning is a skill which it is the most wanted skill wherever you go, wherever you work. Reasoning is very important. And again, this is something you can very easily and very confidently answer. Unless you score around 80-85% marks in this particular thing. No, I won't say unless. If you score around 80-85% marks in this particular section, believe me, you have cracked NET. And very likely, you could also crack JRF. So it's very important that you score as many marks in your paper one as possible, because there are people who score up to 90-95% marks in their paper one. I, for instance, no, I'm not boosting myself, but honestly, I scored around 92% marks. That is, out of 100, I scored 92 marks in my. That is one of the prominent things that allowed me to crack JRF in the first attempt itself. So these are some general stuff. Now, as Adina has been telling, you can come up with your query, because I'm sure there will be queries, and I'm sure I've been too fast. Sorry, that is how I do my stuff. Several times I've tried to slow down, but slowing down actually derails me. So yeah. And I hope that you have got something from this. And I believe that if you are part of the English Wizard community, that is what I would call it. If you are part of the English Wizard community, I believe that there is always professional help forthcoming. And I believe that at least for a bit, I might also be around to help you. That all aside, there will always be professional help forthcoming from the people who are dealing with this. So I think at least some of this has been. I don't know if most of this went over your head. I believe at least some of this has been helpful. And what I would suggest is ponder on this, ponder somewhat on this, and it will eventually make sense. Or else, like I said, these people are brilliant people. They'll help you make sense of it. Yeah, I would pass on to Adina.
All right, Gokul, that was actually very interesting and informative. So if you have any doubts or queries, now is the time to post them. So since I do not see any queries, actually there were some questions, Gokul.
Okay.
Some students have asked, and I note this down. So will you please answer these
Okay.
few questions. Okay. So first one is regarding the duration, regarding the exam,
Okay.
the exam time, as in how to spend these 3 hours while writing the exam, during the exam.
Okay. So I would suggest you have 3 hours for this particular answering this 100 questions, which is in fact very huge because 3 hours means 180 minutes, right? 180 minutes. So one question you are getting around 1.8 minutes, which is huge because if you know the answer, you are going to answer in 15 seconds, nothing more. For example, if you get a question like name the person who called Shakespeare an upstart pro. I know the answer is Robert Greene, so you do not need to ponder on this further. 15 to 20 seconds, you have answered. Now, 180 minutes for 100 questions is huge. It's way more than most of the competitive exams offer you. So what I would suggest is, in the first reading, answer all those questions which you know for sure. In the second reading, answer those questions you can guess at. Like I said, you could do a video on intelligent guessing, and it will give the people an idea about how to go about. I would call it the theory of intelligent guessing. It'll give them an idea of how to guess safely and effectively. And another thing is, like I've been telling you, there is no negative marking, which means that you should answer all the questions. You never know. So the thing is, in the second reading, you could make those guesses which you feel are close to the answer. In the third reading, you would make those far-flung guesses, those things you don't know anything about, but still you are going to make a guess. Now comes the fourth reading. This is where you very carefully read those questions from the comprehension section, from the reason and assertion section. Those questions which you will take your time, you will read very carefully and answer. Because if you have 15 questions from those sections, you must, I say you must, if you are part of the English research community, you must get those 30 marks. Because those 30 marks are the ones which are going to determine whether you get 31,000 rupees.
Okay, Gokul. Now about time management. Would you like to discuss some strategies?
See, strategy, first thing is to do as many mock tests, because unless you do mock tests, you are not going to understand how much time I am taking. For instance, when you do your first paper, you might take 3.5 hours, which is okay. But in the second question paper you do, you will have to eventually reduce it. Make it for a mock test, you will have to finish the exam under 2.5 hours. And then the surefire strategy to go is like this. Those questions you know, answer quickly. Don't ponder over those. And other questions, and finally, set aside 1 hour or 45 minutes at least for those comprehension, reasoning and assertion sections. Because you will have to set aside 1 hour for those, because those, like I told you, if you carefully do those are the 13 marks that you are going to get sure of help. So set aside at least 1 hour for those and finish the rest of it under 1.5 hours or 1 hour and 45 minutes. Final 15 minutes is always for, you'll have to keep it as the contingency fund, as you put it, because you never know. What if you feel like really going to the bathroom in the middle of the exam? You never know. Those things happen.
Yeah.
So keep aside those 15 minutes and plan 1 hour for your comprehension and reason and what the reason and assertion thing, and 1.5 hours for your rest of the day.
Okay, thank you. Another question from one of our participants is you talked about some least important parts.
Okay.
Is it possible to completely skip these parts?
Completely is a word I would hate, because what I was telling you is you are looking at cracking this exam within 15 days or 20 days. When you have the shortest possible time at your hand. At that point, I would suggest you don't go deep into those sections. Like if you look at the Old English period, for instance, you don't go and read Beowulf. You don't go and understand the thematic concerns associated with Beowulf. If you look at you don't go and look at Gramsci's explanations of hegemony. You don't go and learn it in details. You don't go and by heart those definitions. What happens with most of the people is they study for the NET exam the very same way they study for their PG exams, their university exams. That is not at all the way to go about it. If you look at the Old English period, I wouldn't say, you could never say in 15 questions from Old English period. And don't come and say that, okay, Google told me not to learn this thing. Google is all wrong. Google is no. Don't do that, because Google is not the one who is making the question paper. Thing is, the general trend is that those are the portions which you can safely set aside. First, learn history of English literature, then learn literary theory and cultural studies. These are the portions which you can set aside for the last minute. Even if I don't learn these portions, there is not much of an impact. That is what I've been telling. And when you learn those portions, just learn the bare minimum.
Okay, so we have one more question.
Okay.
So they are saying that they've qualified NET several times, but they are unable to qualify JRF. So how do they approach this examination?
See, this is. I know people who have got 8 NET exams and not even one JRF, and they've been asking me, okay, can't UGC make a policy to take all these NETs together and convert it into JRF? See, the thing is, it's kind of difficult because, see, total 6% of the people who apply for NET qualify. For example, let's say 1,000 people applied for NET and 60 people will qualify. And of that, just 10 people will qualify for JRF because only 1% of people who apply for the NET will qualify for JRF. The thing to do to get into that final cutoff, number one, score high in the paper one. In paper one, score at least around 88-90 marks out of 100, which might be difficult, but which is possible. And number two, learn to guess intelligently. Because this is a vast, admittedly, it is a vast syllabus. You can't ever know all the things. For example, if you ask, they could ask anything. What is the name of the dog, the dog character who was the dog of the hero character of Anna Karenina of Leo Tolstoy? Even if I have read the novel, I don't look at dogs. So they could ask anything. But it is all about making an informed guess. So score high in paper one and learn to make informed guesses.
Okay, Gokul. So I think we are done for the day.
Okay, which is very good.
Yeah. So I see that there are no other questions.
Okay.
So I think we can wind up the session.
Yeah.
So we would like to request you people to comment and follow our English Wizards page for more information. So thank you. We